Have you ever wondered where life came from? Religion, philosophies, science, and so on have their own way of explaining where life originated. Well, in terms of science, there is a theory known as spontaneous generation that is one of the oldest theory that was widely believed and supported by the people way back.
Hello! We are here to show you an amazing experiment that paved the way and gave people enlightenment in the early 60s. That living creatures were not formed spontaneously from non-living things. With that, let's talk deeper about the spontaneous generation theory. Are you ready? Do you realize that things don't appear out of nowhere? If so, then you are more intelligent than the majority of people who live in the 60s. Back then, a lot of people, including the scientists, thought that non-living things could spontaneously generate new living things. This idea is known as spontaneous generation. At the time, it was thought that living things spontaneously evolved from non-living ones. They have developed this concept by the way they observe their surroundings.
A Greek philosopher named Aristotle was one of the earliest recorded scholars to effectively voice out the theory of spontaneous generations, the notion that life can arise from non-living matter with the presence of vital heat. One of his experiments that tries to explain how living things are spontaneously created from non-living things is when he observed that the maggots were formed from decaying meat. The idea of Aristotle has been contradicted by some scientists including Francesco, Lazzaro Spallanzani, and Louis Pasteur. So, these three scientists and many others to verify that living matter arises only from other living matter. The experiments are historically interesting since spontaneous generations was the accepted theory of life for hundreds of years, yet it was officially disproved in the year 1864. And in the year 1668, Francesco was the first scientist to have about the validity of Aristotle's ideas about spontaneous generations. And so he wanted to disprove the theory that Aristotle believed. In what way did he investigate it? Well, let's first know who Francesco is.
Francesco was an Italian naturalist, physician, and poet. He was born on February 18, 1626 in Azero, Italy, and died on March 1, 1697 in Pisa. At the age of 31, Redi graduated with his doctoral degree in medicine and philosophy from the University of Pisa in Italy. Redi has been called the father of modern parasitology and the founder of experimental biology. He was one of the most significant scientists to question the way that science was traditionally studied after Aristotle. With that, Redi gained fame for his controlled experiments. One set of experiments reflected a popular notion of spontaneous generation, a belief that living organisms could arise from non-living matter. He then came up with a simple experiment.
To test the hypothesis, Francesco placed pressure in 6 containers, whereas the first 2 containers were left open. And as expected, the rooting leaf attracted flies. Very soon, the flesh was covered in maggots, which later hatched into flies. The 2 more jars were tied to cover. No maggots were created since the 2 additional jars were tightly sealed off to prevent flies from entering. Redi covered the final 2 jars with several layers of porous glue rather than airtight cover to address the criticism that it cut of the fresh air required for spontaneous generation. The decomposing meat also attracted flies who gathered on the goods, which quickly become covered in maggots, but did affect the flesh itself. Since they don't appear out of thin air from rooting, fresh flies are therefore required to generate flies.
We will demonstrate and outline the events of Francesco Redi's experiment so that you can better comprehend it.
Let's start setting up our experiment. First, we prepare 3 jars, and each jar we're going to place a fork. Each jar is going to receive a different treatment. First jar is going to be open, and the second jar will be covered in gauze, and the third jar will be sealed with lid. Now, we're going to take these jars, and we're going to leave them outside for 24 hours before checking them again and collecting data. These 3 jars were going to be placed in a safe location outside that is safe from any other animals.
On the first day of the experiment, the color, texture, and the size were just the same, but the smell was a bit strong. There are few flies on the third jar, but there are no maggots. On the second day of the experimentation, the color is a bit pale, the texture is a bit slimy, the size is still the same, and the smell is more pungent. There are more flies, also dead flies inside the third jar, and there are some maggots on the second jar and the third jars. On the third day of the experiment, the color is slightly turning green, the texture is more slimy, the size has shrunk because of the maggots eating it, and the smell is very strong. There are more flies and maggots in the second and third jars inside than the past few days, while the first jar has maggots only outside.
After this experiment, people were willing to acknowledge that larger organisms did not develop by spontaneous generation. This experiment then proved that maggots arise from flies, not from decaying matter, which was opposite to what Aristotle believed that formation of maggots were from decaying meat. This meant that worms will not be formed spontaneously, they rather form only where there is pre-existing life, therefore preventing flies from having direct contact with the meat would also prevent the appearance of maggots.
While the hypothetical process of the spontaneous generation was disproved as early as the 17th century, it did not end to that. The debate over the spontaneous generation continued for the centuries, with the scientists serving as a proponents of the design. To settle that debate, that Paris Academy of the Sciences offered a prize for resolution of the problem.
One scientist, whose name is Louis Pasteur, ran an experiment that officially disproved the theory of the spontaneous generation with his famous swan neck flanks experiment, and earned him the prestigious Alhambra Prize from the Paris Academy of the Sciences in 1862.
In conclusion, Redi'S experiment clearly shows that life is required for the creation of life. In addition, Louis Pasteur asserted that life only comes from life. A reminder to never leave food out in the open space, since flies will lay their little eggs, which if you don't see, you will consume and could create significant problems later.